Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we are continuing with Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter number 9, the most confidential knowledge. We're going to cover verses 4 through 9. We did verses 1 through 3 last week. Verse number 4. Maya tatam idam sarvam jagat avyakta murtina matsthani sarva bhutani na chaham teshva avasthitaha. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. By me, in my unmanifested form, this entire universe is pervaded. All beings, excuse me, all beings are in me, but I am not in them. Om Agyana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Once again, thank you all for joining. Hare Krishna to all of you. And today's topic is how can one become free of miseries? Now, in the beginning of this chapter, the very first verse is where Krishna is telling Arjuna that because you're not envious of me, I'm going to give you more knowledge, most confidential knowledge. And in the second verse, we learn Krishna says, Rajavidya Rajaguhyam Pavitram Idam Uttamam, that this Bhagavad Gita is the king of education. It is a secret, it's confidential, very confidential. And also it is Uttamam, it is transcendental, topmost, Pavitram, it's pure, and it's Susukham. It gives a lot of happiness and peace just by taking on this knowledge from Bhagavad Gita. So Arjuna has been advised by Krishna in this chapter that if one somehow or the other hears about Bhagavad Gita, one can advance spiritually just by hearing about Krishna. And Arjuna was the correct student to learn Bhagavad Gita because he was not envious and he heard the Bhagavad Gita properly, and the result was he became free from all miseries. So this is what Krishna is explaining, that if we want to become free of miseries, then we need to take on this knowledge of Bhagavad Gita. Now in verse number 3, Krishna told Arjuna that those who are not faithful in this devotional service, making it very clear that to be able to understand the Bhagavad Gita, to come to the stage of self-realization, one has to have faith. And that faith needs to be made more and more stronger with the help of knowledge. So he says that those who are not faithful in this path of devotional service, they cannot attain the Supreme Lord. Instead, he says they return back to this material world, which is the path of birth and death. So we have seen, so many people being born in front of us and so many who die in front of us. And that is the cycle of birth and death. And this place where we are is called the material world. And that is why it's full of misery. So there is the cycle of birth and death, and that continues as long as there is action and reaction. Now in the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains in verse number 3, how does karma work? The whole idea is to become karma free, which means we perform actions in such a way that we do not incur any reactions. Then only we will be able to break the cycle of birth and death. Now, karma, there are different stages of reactions. Now, some of them are called Prarabdha Karma, which means something that we are facing right now. whatever misery it may be. It may be misery of the body, it may be misery caused by others, it could be misery caused by material nature, whatever it is. So whatever we are facing reactions now is called Prarabdha Karma. Now another is called Phalanamukha, which means it's karma which is waiting, which means we have performed some activities in the past, but we have not yet reaped the fruits of those activities. So it's still waiting. Now, another is called Kuta, which means it's dormant. And then there's called Bija, which means they are in the seed form. Now, all this is due to ignorance. As long as we stay ignorant of the spiritual knowledge, the cycle of birth and death will continue. The cycle of karma will continue. But if we have basic faith that there is a Supreme Lord, that we are not God, that there is a purpose to human life, there is a goal to human life, and to have faith that this Bhagavad Gita was spoken by the Supreme Lord Krishna himself. Now, this faith, if we associate with spiritually minded people, then this faith starts becoming more firm. And then we will be able to really understand who we really are. Right now, most people identify with this body. Nobody really thinks deep about who we really are, that we are the spirit soul and we are different from this body. So the explanation given about faith is that it is complete conviction that simply by serving Krishna through the process of devotional service, we will achieve perfection. That kind of faith. And Krishna says that those who do not have faith, even if they are performing devotional service to him, there will be no perfection, because faith is very, very important, and that can be made firm only with the help of adequate knowledge. Knowledge is very important. So we need both. We need faith and we need knowledge as well. Now, taking on knowledge is good, but it's not good enough. Just like in school, I remember in my days, that's decades ago, when we were in school, especially in the science class, the teacher would teach us theory part, this plus this equals this, whatever. And then she would take us to the laboratory to perform that experiment. In other words, there was theory part, and then there was the practicals to show us whatever we've learned, this is what the result is. So the same applies with spiritual knowledge as well. Excuse me. We take on spiritual knowledge, but then we need to put it into practice. And devotional service begins only with chanting the holy names of the Lord. And all these classes that we've been having since so many years, we always chant after the class. Why? Because that is the basis of spirituality. When we chant the holy names of the Lord, those spiritual sound vibrations, they go into our ears and straight to the heart, and it starts cleansing the heart of any unwanted things that might be in the heart. It could be lust, anger, greed, pride, envy, illusion, anything. All that is cleansed. And then we reach the stage of perfection, because now the heart is clean, it's pure, and we are able to understand what we are hearing. We are able to put it into practice. And that is when we become free of miseries, and it gives us immense happiness and peace of mind. Now, this verse that we read today, verse number 4, Krishna is talking about, excuse me, about the relationship with the material world. Now, there is higher studies to Bhagavad Gita, which is called Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the essence of the Vedas. in which we get a lot more knowledge about the universes, how the universes are created, etc. But here Krishna is giving us a small glimpse of how the universes are pervaded by Krishna himself in his unmanifested form. Now, even though he is the creator, he's creating the universes, he is not affected by it. Krishna, he's connected, yet he's not in the material world. He's not connected in the sense it, just like when we perform our activities, we face reactions. Every action has a reaction. But when it comes to the Supreme Lord, he is aloof from the material world. Now, it is not possible for us to really perceive the whole creation with our material senses. Just like if I don't wear my glasses, I can't really see clearly. I need the help of my glasses to see clearly. Similarly, we need to wear glasses of the scriptures, of the Vedas, of the Bhagavad Gita. When we have that, glasses of the scriptures, then we can see clearly what exactly is Krishna trying to explain. So to be able to change our material senses and make them into spiritual senses, it's called, just like, let me give you an example. Let's take an iron rod. And that iron rod, when the iron rod is put in fire, gradually the iron rod becomes so hot that it has the same it becomes hot, it gives light, and it gives heat. It acts exactly same like fire. So you can, I don't know if there's a word called fireized, the iron rod gets fireized, which means it works like fire. If you touch it, it's going to burn because it has taken on the qualities of fire. Similarly, when we start performing pure devotional service under the guidance of a guru, then we become Krishnized, which means then our senses, they get spiritualized, and then we can see what is right and what is wrong. And that is the time when Krishna says he reveals himself to that devotee. Now, he's everywhere. God is everywhere, but we cannot see him. Why? Because we don't have the spiritual vision. There's a beautiful verse in Brahma Samhita where Lord Brahma says, Premanjana churita bhakti vilochanena santa sadeva hridayeshu vilokayanti. It's, I know, difficult to understand because it's in Sanskrit, but the meaning is, as soon as we have an ointment of love in our eyes, that's when we will be able to see Govinda Krishna. So that ointment of love is possible only through pure devotional service. And the first step of devotional service is chanting the holy names of the Lord, which is called mantra meditation. Now, just like the sun is in one place, but the sunshine is spread all over. Similarly, it is explained in the Bhagavad Gita that Krishna's energy is spread all over the creation. He's the source, he's the maintainer, but he's not directly associated with it, which means he is aloof from this material creation. Now, in verse number 5, excuse me, let me read verse number 5, what Krishna says in verse number 5. Excuse me, I have a bad throat. So in verse number 5, Krishna says, and yet everything that is created does not rest in me. Behold my mystic opulence. Although I'm the maintainer of all living entities, and although I am everywhere, I am not a part of this cosmic manifestation, for myself is the very source of creation. So from this we can see Krishna is giving us knowledge about his position, that he is the supreme personality of Godhead. He is the creator, he is the maintainer, and he's also the annihilator. And he says he is everywhere. And he's saying, behold my mystic opulence. Now one may say, why would we want to know about the opulence of the Lord? Well, the more we hear about his mystic opulences, the more we'll get attracted to him, right? Say, supposing my mom says, that I have found a boy for you to get married. And so then I'm curious to know, who is this? What is his name? Where does he live? I want to hear more. So the more I will hear about him, the more I will get attracted. So the same applies for hearing about anybody. But when we hear about the Supreme Lord's opulences, that is the utmost attraction, you can say. So he says, even though I'm the maintainer, I'm everywhere, yet I'm not part of the creation, even though I'm the source, which means he's not directly maintaining and sustaining. He is just there to just desire it. It's his will. As they say, not a blade of grass moves without the permission of the Lord. So he just has to desire it, and it happens. But he remains detached. And, after hearing all this, we may say, it seems to be inconceivable. Yes, it is inconceivable, but it is possible to understand by the mercy of Krishna. Now, in verse number 6, Krishna says, understand that as the mighty wind blowing everywhere rests always in the sky, all created beings rest in me. What a nice analogy he's giving us to make us understand what is our position. Where do we stand? That is what he's trying to explain, that how do we understand what Krishna is trying to say? It's very simple. He says that mighty wind, even though it's blowing, but it's resting in the sky. And Srila Prabhupada, he explains in the purport very nicely that the sky may be the biggest manifestation. And in the sky, the wind may be the biggest manifestation. Now, the movement of air influences movement of everything. Wind is great, but still it is in the sky. It is not beyond the sky. You understand? So wind is there, it's in the sky, it's not beyond. So similarly, the cosmic manifestation, it exists. Now let's say a nice example Srila Prabhupada gives is that let's think that the sky is like an upside down bowl. A bowl, there's a bowl. And let's think that the sky is like an upside bowl, and the wind is blowing freely, but it's blowing only inside that sky, that bowl, that sky. You see, the sky restricts the area, but not the movement, which means the wind cannot go beyond the sky. It is inside only. So the sky is not holding its movement, it's allowing it to move freely, but it's restricting its area. So that is important. Like, I can give you another example. Now, if my child wants to play, so I send my child in the backyard to play. Now my backyard is fenced. So the child has freedom of movement, but the area is restricted. You understand? The child cannot go outside the fence. The child can move only inside the fence. So this is how very nicely Srila Prabhupada explains in verse number 6. Let's see verse number 7. Krishna says, O son of Kunti, which is Arjuna, at the end of the millennium, all material manifestations enter into my nature. And at the beginning of another millennium, by my potency, I create them again. So you see, this is so very important. there is more information, more knowledge in Srimad Bhagavatam, which I said is the essence of Vedas. So I'll give you just a glimpse of what is given in there because it's connected with this verse. So the end of millennium is actually our earthly years is 311 trillion 40 billion years. That is the end of millennium. And when that ends, then there is another millennium that starts and Krishna creates all over again. Now there are 8.4 million different species of lives, not the what is that called, population, but it's the different species, different kinds. Like according to the Vedas, there are 3 million different species of animals, 2 million different species of trees, 1 million different species of birds, 1.1 million species of insects. There are 900,000 different species of aquatics that live in the water, and there are only 400,000 different species of human beings. So that makes the total of 8.4 million species. Now, in verse number 8, we saw Krishna says that the whole cosmic order is under him. Based on his will, he manifests it. And based on his will, he again annihilates it. That means it depends on his will. Everyone is bound by the restrictions given by Krishna himself. Now, even though Krishna is creating, annihilating, etc., but all this work does not bind him. He's detached. But when we perform actions, we are bound. In chapter number 3, we learned Yagnarthat karmano nyatra lokoyam karma bandhanaha tad artham karma kantya mukta sangha samachara. Krishna tells Arjuna, work done as a sacrifice for Krishna has to be performed. Otherwise, work causes bondage. And that's what we learned, how to lead a karma-free life in chapter 3 and 5. But here we see that when Krishna says at creation, Krishna enters. Now, what does that mean? Krishna expands himself as Mahavishnu. Now, this Mahavishnu, when he just breathes, innumerable universes come out from the pores of Mahavishnu. And in each universe, the Lord again expands himself as Garbhodakshai Vishnu. And then he again expands himself as Kshirodakshai Vishnu, who is actually situated in the heart of every living entity known as the super soul. And all this, and then Krishna says all living entities are created at the same time, whether it's humans, birds, animals, aquatics, insects, whatever it may be, everything happens by the will of the Supreme Lord. So this is what he has explained in where he says in verse number 8, the whole cosmic order is under me, under my will, it is automatically manifested again and again. And under my will, it is annihilated at the end. So this is what he's talking about in verse number 8. Now, in today's last verse is number 9, where he says, O Dhananjaya, he's addressing Arjuna. He says, all this work cannot bind me. I am ever detached from all these material activities, seated as though neutral. When he talks about neutral, it reminds me of a very nice example, which Srila Prabhupada also gives, is let's take a high court judge. Now, the judge has the responsibility to give judgment based on, the evidences that are there, etc., etc. Now, the judge is always neutral. If he finds, the person is punishable, will give the punishment. But if he thinks that no, this person is not guilty and needs to be rewarded, will reward. But the judge doesn't get affected whether one gets awarded or punished or whatever. He remains neutral, and that is the position of Krishna. He remains neutral. He says all this that I do in material creation, annihilation, etc., etc., does not bind me. I'm detached, and at the same time, I am neutral. He is only engaged in the spiritual world. He is absolutely neutral, like the High Court judge. So, all this knowledge that we have learned today, and of course, last week, where we covered verses 1 through 3, and today from 4 through 9, all this knowledge leads to only one solution to remove all miseries from life. Now, one may say, I have no miseries at all. I am healthy. I have a good job. I have a house. I have a nice family. I have good bank balance, etc., etc. And I'm very happy. Sure, right now, maybe. But how long is that happiness going to last? That is a big question, because as the Bhagavad Gita says, Dukhalayam ashashvatam, that this material world is a place of misery and it is temporary. And we all have noticed at some part of our lives that we did face some misery. It could be health problems, it could be wealth problems, it could be any kind of problem. So the main 7 miseries that the scriptures talk about, the Vedas talk about, is birth, disease, old age, and death. These are the 4 miseries, and there are 3 more. Miseries caused by mind and body, miseries caused by other living entities, and miseries caused by material nature. So during some part of our lives, we do have to face this. We all are born, and Krishna says those who are born are there sure to die. And after death, one is sure to be born again, and that is reincarnation. So these miseries are there. But the question is, how can one become free of all these miseries? Now, I don't like to become old or get diseased, and obviously, no one likes to die. The 8th wonder of the world, we have 7 wonders of the world, but the 8th wonder of the world is people see other people dying, but they think, I am never going to die. That's a wonder of the world, and that's not true. Everyone has to leave this body at some point of life, some point of time. So if we really want to become free of these miseries while living in this body, then the best course of action is to perform service with devotion, as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita. Satatam kirtayanto mam yatantasya dhridavrata. He says we must always be chanting, we must always be doing mantra meditation, because that is the first step of devotional service, because that will help us to purify the heart, and then we will reach a stage of consciousness where miseries will not have any effect on us, which means that doesn't mean that miseries will not come. They will certainly come based on our past karma. If we've done good, we get good reactions. If we have done bad, we get bad reactions. That will happen, but we will have the spiritual strength to face them. And that is what Bhagavad Gita teaches us. And the best way is to do mantra meditation. Now, I will in the chat, I will post some links, which those of you who have joined for the first time, can take advantage of it, where we have the Zoom link of our classes. I'm sorry, Wednesday class got moved to Tuesday because I'm traveling tomorrow, but every week we have it on Wednesday. So there's a Zoom link, there's a Facebook page where we have realizations. Then there's a YouTube channel where you can watch the previous recordings of Bhagavad Gita. And then there's a WhatsApp group where you can join if you like. And I post realizations on a daily basis. But at the end, you see the Maha Mantra. What is mantra? Man means mind, and tra means to free the mind. So when we chant this 16 words mantra, it helps to free our mind from all anxieties. So I will just chant for a few minutes just to let you know, give you a demonstration of how to chant. And it'll be my humble request that if you can chant on a daily basis, so that you can yourself see how this helps one to calm the mind, to become peaceful, and also experience happiness and satisfaction. So I'll just chant for a few minutes. So if you like, you can join me too. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So you see, it's very, very simple. And even if you try to chant just 10 minutes a day, that also will really give a lot of benefit. I've been chanting for almost 35 years and I'm not bored of it because I see the results. I have experienced how beneficial this mantra meditation is. So it's my humble request to all of you, if you're not chanting, please start chanting. So far we have learned in chapter 9, the most confidential knowledge, where Krishna tells Arjuna that this knowledge is something that will make you joyful, make you happy. It's confidential. It is a king of education, and it's joyfully performed. It's transcendental. It's pure. And knowing this, there's nothing more to be known. And then he explains his position as a supreme personality of Godhead, that how he creates, how he manifests, how he unmanifests, how all living entities are created, etc., etc. So we are going to continue with verse number 10 next week. So if any of you have any questions or comments, you're welcome to ask.